Managing Remote Teams with Heather Wilde.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host. Make sure to check out www.azuredevops.show for past episodes and show notes. And again, I've announced it before, but April 30th is the next .NET DevOps Bootcamp training in Austin, Texas. Lots of people are signing up. Don't miss your chance. And also, I'm excited. Lots of people are taking us up on the offer of a complimentary 30-point DevOps inspection for your automated DevOps environment. It's helping a lot of people. And if you are new to the show, the Azure DevOps Podcast is for developers shipping software with Microsoft technologies. And we have great guests and interviews all around delivery of software and deep diving into the technical bits, but also into how teams work together. And with me today is Heather Wilde, and she is the CTO of ROCeteer, is also known as the Unicorn Whisperer due to her special focus on entrepreneurs. She's a personal and professional growth expert, executive coach, author, and speaker. And she's a multiple award-winning 6-time CTO, 5-time certified executive coach, author, speaker, nonprofit director, Howard Hughes College of Engineering Advisory Board Chair. She's affiliated with 3 entrepreneurial accelerators, worked with governments on economic development projects for over 20 years. And she was an early employee of Spirit Airlines, a founding member of Evernote, and she oversaw the company's growth from just thousands to 100 million customers, and was also one of the only women to have programmed, designed, produced, and published a game at the company THQ. She's worked with the U.S. Navy, NASA, so many things in her background, and she's received commendations of her work from the U.S. government, Female Executive of the Year, so many things to mention in her background, and her writing and speaking spans social media, entrepreneurialism, startups, leadership, cybersecurity, and she currently lives in Las Vegas, Nevada, and she hosts the Entrepreneurial Revolution column for Inc. magazine, among other things. Heather, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm very good. Did I miss anything? You've done so much.
Oh, there's tons. But every time someone talks to me, they're like, "Wow, you did that too? How old are you?"
Well, today, and actually, as the show goes, there's lots of things happening in the industry with cloud software as a service is basically the norm now, and you, of course, with Evernote being in that vein, but lots of people, even this month, are working remotely as well, and you've done a lot of that. But before we dive in, there are some people who've kind of seen your work and are readers of your work. But for those who are getting to know you for the first time, what's your story and background? How did you end up doing this, and was this your master career plan?
It's really interesting. When I was a kid, I fell in love with computers from the first time I ever got one. My dad gave me my first computer when I was 8 years old, at a time when most people had never seen one, except on maybe a movie or a TV show. So I was extremely lucky. And I mean, we didn't even have computers in schools at the time. And so I had access to one at home, and I utilized that to the fullest. And I knew that I wanted to do something technical with computers in my career, even at that age. But the same year was the year of the Challenger explosion. And as it happens for people like me, I'm an introvert, so like I don't deal with emotion very well. I'm also like very low EQ, so when big things like that happen, it tends to affect me really hard. And what 8-year-old me did was decide that was going to make me become an astronaut. And so while little kids are always like, "Oh, I want to be an astronaut," like, and then next week they want to be a fireman. For me, I really went hard on the astronaut thing. And by the time I was 16, I was at NASA. So, I mean, the combination of like analytical mindset and type A and all of that, I was working towards like becoming an astronaut and getting in that. I mean, right now they're actually looking for the next set of astronauts for the Mars missions. And it's that I was working towards. And unfortunately, my health isn't good enough to go up there. And you can even look online to see they're looking for X-Men. They're looking for, they want the Avengers. They're looking for Captain Marvel. And I am not that. But I got to be around all of those people. And it really helped me to understand that, like, while you can achieve, I mean, you can get so close, you can get 99% of the way to your goal. But there's some things that you just can't do, but that doesn't mean that you failed. So that was really a helpful thing to learn at an early age. And then my first career was over when I was 18, and then I got to have another one.
Wow. Wow. And so what was more significant later on? What was it? Was it Spirit Airlines? Was it Evernote? What other things really shaped you?
Well, so what was interesting was I didn't leave government right away. I kind of shuffled around a bit because I'm like, okay, well, I'm thinking government now. I already understand how this works, and my mind like doesn't shift as quickly. I mean, it adapts very quickly in the NASA way, but it doesn't shift like, okay, well, I'm gonna completely do a 180. So I shifted. I wanted to go for new kinds of education because I only knew math and science and physics and astrophysics at that point in time. So I actually went and got another degree in liberal arts. And then I followed that on with a degree in foreign languages and medieval history. And I took that and I applied that to a tech career in game design. And that was going great until 9/11, when people stopped playing games. So when when THQ shut our boutique company down, like, because we had a design studio in Boston, some friends of mine and I, we started up a government studio to create door locks, so to keep people out of the cockpit of an airplane.
Yeah.
And that was actually the company that was the company before Evernote with the same team. And we did that for 5 years with the aim of keep the wrong people out of the airline cockpit and keep the right people in. And within 5 years, we had reached our goal. We sold it inside the DoD and to the airline companies. And then we sold that company and started Evernote.
Okay, awesome. And so you've been a programmer for your entire life, but when did you kind of shift from being a programmer and writing code all day, which is really fun if for anyone who's listening who's never tried it, to managing programmers or leading teams?
So when I was at Core Street, the government company, I recognized that there were a lot of people that were way better programmers than me. But the people that were way better programmers than me tended to be way less good at talking to other people, especially talking to people about what they were doing. And that communication piece was so crucial to the success or failure of our company. I noticed that there were a lot of things that were falling to the wayside in the company. Like there were things that were on our calendar that were just being missed, clients that weren't being updated. Our CEO had no idea what was going on because like he didn't know when in a meeting if something was ready or not for him to demo, because like the developers may have checked it in, but they didn't tell him about it. So we would have failed and fast if somebody hadn't just started doing that communication piece. So rather than use my mediocre skill as a developer, where something that I can code would take like maybe a week, when one of these other guys could do it in a night. And not to say that I wouldn't have gotten to that point, but I wasn't there yet. But meanwhile, I could just go up and ask them, hey, how are you doing? Do you know that this is important? Do you know that there's a demo coming up and this is more important than that? And they'd be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do that. And then now I could go to the CEO and say, hey, this thing is going to be ready for you in time for the demo. Right. And by the way, they won't shut down the servers during these times to update it.
Yeah, kind of important.
Yeah. So it was during that time that I recognized on my own that I had a skill that was more important than my programming skills would ever be.
Awesome. Now, tell me about Evernote, because that team, I mean, just the scale of it and just a phenomenally successful product, that's got to be a fascinating story.
Yes. So at CoreStreet, this was a company that, as I mentioned before, was in Boston. And anyone that lives in the Northeast, especially the Northeast, knows that it is cold in the winters. And those winters last from September to April. And it is gray and cold and dark and miserable and expensive. And I was making at the time around $75,000 a year. And it cost me $90,000 a year to live there. So I just kept being in debt over debt over debt. So I decided, screw this, I'm moving to Mexico. So when we got out of CoreStreet, I got a boat. I moved to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, actually just a little bit north of Cabo San Lucas, to a town called La Paz. And I was just on my boat, like getting out of debt. Like, I mean, I was just taking contract positions and I was just happy doing that.
From where? Over the internet? From local people?
Over the internet.
Remotely?
Working remotely. I was happy. I was like on phone calls, just turning in my work. It was fine. I was actually an account manager for a charitable giving company. So I was working for Starbucks and Patagonia and Alcon. I mean, it was really cool. I was happy. No stress. And then, I mean, the town was called La Paz. It means peace. It was a nice place. And then soon after I'm settled, I get a call from Phil Libin, who was the CEO of CoreStreet and soon to be of Evernote. He's like, hey, we're about to start this new company in California and we really need your help. And I'm like, not again. I just got out of this. I'm not going back. And he's like, oh, well, whatever. So then a few months later, he calls me up and he's like, no, but we really need you. And I'm like, what am I going to do there? I'm not coming into the office. I'm in Mexico. He's like, oh, but we really need you. Then a couple months later, he sends me his wife to ask me
physically.
Yeah, to ask me to come to work for them because they really need my help. And there was like a gift basket involved with cookies, and it was. I mean, it was, and it was a lot of. He was appealing to my better nature to come, and I was like, okay, two things. I'm staying on my boat in Mexico. And I'm never going to work in this office. And he's like, okay, you got it.
Now, how was the internet line to that boat? Was it wireless? Was it dock connected?
So at the time, before I moved down there, I did a lot of planning. There was an internet plan if you had a certain zip code in Arizona that was unlimited 3G, which was high tech at that time.
Oh yeah.
For Canada, US, and Mexico. So I got myself a PO box for that Arizona town and got myself an unlimited cell phone that I then used as a hotspot for that. So that was one of my forms of internet.
Wow. Hey, that's smart.
Yeah. And another one was we had Wi-Fi from the marina that we were in, but that only worked when we were in the marina. And another one is a backup. We got two Mexican hotspots from a Mexican cell phone provider from each of the two different plans. So one was GSM and one was CDMA.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a software engineering firm and Microsoft Gold partner, empowering development teams to be their best. ClearMeasure equips developers with the DevOps tools, methods, and automation necessary to focus on building their applications, rather than wrestling with builds, deployments, or environments. Click clear-measure.com to see whether a DevOps implementation is for you.
Hey, this is Jeffrey. Do you ever wonder if your software project is on the right path? It's really common for software projects to experience delays, to have the quality not where it needs to be, or have the team spending more time maintaining the software than you really should. In my practice, we know the challenges implementing all parts of DevOps, and it can make your head spin how many things you have to think about, and somewhere in your gut, you know that something's missing. So I've created a comprehensive 30-point DevOps inspection, reviewing your current process, methods, tools, source control, build integration, the various levels of testing, provisioning and maintaining environments, deploying, logging, telemetry, everything you need to think about in a high throughput, high productivity DevOps environment. And it really helps you gain peace of mind knowing that you're on the right track. And we are offering some more of our really popular 30-point DevOps inspections, and it's normally a $5,000 value, but I'm giving it away for free for my podcast listeners. Just send me an email, jeffrey@clear-measure.com. That's Jeffrey. And I'd be happy to inspect your existing DevOps environment, whether you use Azure DevOps Services, Octopus Deploy, TeamCity, any number of tools, because there are a lot out there. But what's important is that you have a complete and automated DevOps environment put together the right way. So get a second pair of eyes. Send me an email. All right. So you agree to come on board, but you're staying on your boat, which you've got to have pictures of your little cockpit workstation, I'm sure.
I do.
Well, how many monitors? What was it? How did you set that up? Was it a cabin cruiser of some sort?
So we had a 45-foot sailboat that was a center cockpit. So it's about as wide of a cruiser that you could get. It had 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. And in the center was the salon. And so in this boat, there's actually 2 navigational stations. So my husband and I, each both worked for Evernote eventually. In the beginning, it was just me. But so what I would do was in the morning, I'd wake up and I'd use the bedroom nav station as my desk. And then as I sort of woke up, I would move to the salon nav station. And I would this is just a built-in desk because you're supposed to be having charts and things on it. And so, it's a desk that's built into the boat, and it's pretty comfortable. I just have a seat there and I just work on it. But because of my job at Evernote, I was the director of global technical support, so in charge of QA, technical marketing, technical support, even DevOps to some degree, as the way they integrate. I had all of the tech. So everything that we were on, I had Blackberries, I had Palm Pilots, I had iPhones and iPads, and when they existed, because they didn't when we started. But all of that stuff was on the boat. So this was too much for my nav station to have. So I would just like stick it underneath the locker, like in a boat locker, and then just pull things out as I needed to test.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So did you have to build your team, or did you inherit a team?
So we started out when there were only 8 employees.
Okay.
So it was just those of us from Core Street. And then as we grew, we hired and grew. So I was the top of my pyramid, and then hired every single person beneath me. The first person I hired was my husband, because I knew obviously how he worked. And then we started hiring people in pairs, actually, because we knew the way that we worked together, we had a good tee-up process for like things would come in, and we needed to have 24/7 support. So we needed to have like a kind of a coverage process between 2 people, at least. So, and we needed to have coverage if one person was sick and one person wasn't. And since it was a small company, we always wanted to have redundancy. So yeah, every time we hired, we needed to hire one person, we always hired 2.
So you're in Mexico. Where are you hiring these people location-wise, and how are you setting them up?
Everywhere in the world, depending, like it didn't matter where the person was located. What mattered was the skills that we needed at the time. So the first people we hired they were located in India, not because we were looking for Indian outsourcers, but because we were looking for a very specific skill set. We wanted something that's called a sales engineer. And the reason for that, anyone that knows that term knows that a sales engineer is someone that is technical that can also communicate. And like these are people that are or have been programmers at one point in time, but do have that communication skill. And the main source of sales engineers at the time were people that had been hired as either technical level 3 employees at IBM or Dell, or as specifically sales engineers. And most of them at the time were at call centers in India. So we were just like, okay, well, we put this call out, and the responses were either from Austin, Texas, or from India.
Yeah.
And we could afford the people in India at the time.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm in Austin, Texas, and Dell is massive, huge footprint here in the city for everything. But so you have a worldwide group. Probably very few people are actually physically in the same place. Are they all working from home? How are you setting these people up? Because even today, as this show is coming out, there are people who are figuring out how to work remotely for the first time. And you did it at some significant scale. So what were the tips and the tricks that you learned or you found out? So
what we found was that the main thing that we needed to institute right away was a source of persistent communication. So and that had to be 2-sided. We had to have a kind of water cooler. And we had to have a work communication. So now this is before Slack or something like that existed. So, and that's not to say that I think Slack is the be all and end all of things. In fact, I have many Slack channels that I'm a part of and I barely check them. But we have to have some way for people to communicate with each other. So what we did was we set up a series of Skype channels. Actually, I believe at the time it was still Yahoo Messenger, because Skype didn't really exist yet. So how we did this was we added everybody into chats for work and chats for like general. And these were on 24/7. So as somebody came on in India, as somebody came like awake in Japan or Russia or wherever they were located, Mexico, we could just be like, hey, good morning, I'm awake now. Not even like I'm starting work, but just like good morning. And one of the things that I had people do was like if they were saying good morning, I wanted them to say it in their own language. Like, so like the people from India, I wanted them to say it in Hindi or whichever language. And so we then started to get to know each other as people like we would in an office. Now on the work channel, that was specifically for asking questions about work and mentioning things and that. So, but we kept the two separate. So soon we became a community of friends, where one of our employees in France was talking about the PhD she was working on after work. So she would actually, because she was on all the time working on her PhD, she would be on like able to talk to people and like coach them like all night and like keep them motivated, because it was helping her keep motivated. Meanwhile, like she wouldn't touch the work channel after work. And but it was helping people know that there was somebody there, even though like they were working, but somebody else was there with them holding the flag, you know?
Yeah.
So that was a really important thing. They, like some people actually, if they were in the same city, they would co-work together in an office some days. But most people actually did work from home. And eventually we had enough people in one city that we would bring them into an office together, but it was actually very expensive to do that. Because for San Francisco, for example, it cost us something like $4,800 a month for every employee's desk that we had in rent. And so it was more cost effective for us to not have people come in.
Right. Now, I'm sure some of these people were naturally better at setting up their own home for productivity, and then others needed some help. Is that a true guess?
Yes and no. I mean, we gave people guidelines. I mean, we sent everybody equipment.
Okay.
So everybody got the same computers. Everybody got, yes and no. So everybody got the same test equipment. But if you wanted to work on a different kind of machine for your work machine, then you certainly could do that. So there was one employee that like his best work day happened to be he'd got everything into a 4-hour time slot while he was also playing Call of Duty from midnight to 4 a.m. Like for some reason, like he could multitask like crazy, and he did everything from those times. I could never get him to show up to a meeting, but his work was the best of anybody.
Wow.
But he did everything on this like crazy gaming machine, and tested only on the machines that we sent him. And he was always like, "Oh, a Mac."
Right. Exactly. Well, if you're just fast forward to kind of today's infrastructure and tools, what seems to be the natural equivalents or the choices that are your go-to selection today?
So today, what people generally need to do is think about what their equivalent communication style is going to be. In my work, for example, what we do is we have a lot of virtual meetings. We use Zoom for that, and Zoom allows for a virtual background. So that can make things a lot more fun. So in order to do that, we have ring lights that we clip on to our computers to light up faces, and little circular green screens that we can clip onto the back of our chairs. So we can have a virtual background that we select, and we can change them. So I know somebody that likes to have an animated GIF of the solar system behind her when she has her calls. And I generally choose to have Las Vegas backgrounds because it makes me happy to see my city that I'm in. But then I can also be consistent no matter where I am. And that way, even if I'm in Dubai, I can still show that I'm in Las Vegas. So that's one way. Another way is to use Slack to communicate with people. However, people tend to go overboard with that. I think that you don't need to have so many channels that people do now. Just remember when you're creating any Slack channel, why you're creating it. For us, what we did was, initially, we wanted to again, create like a water cooler. Like, what would you do in an office if you were talking to someone? And it was have somebody there, like have that communication, get to know people. And third, something that we did at Evernote that I think that people should kind of start doing again is just have a virtual wall. Like if you're, there used to be an app called Appearin, that you could just have an Appearin link. And if you were co-working, if you just had a camera in your room and you just wanted other people to just kind of co-work with you virtually, you could just click that, and then you're just all typing together, but you just feel like somebody else is there with you. And we did that in the company. Like as we opened up more offices around the world, we just had a little window into those offices so that you could see that while we were in different places, we really are all together. So I wouldn't be surprised if very soon somebody pops up another Appearin server so that people can just show like, yeah, I'm not talking to you right now, but I'm here next to you. And we're doing the same thing. We're working. I may be on a phone call and I'm muted, or I'm programming with my head's down, but you know that I'm here because we need that. We need to know that somebody's here. That's kind of why people in China started using TikTok to show like, yeah, I'm in quarantine, but like, this is what I'm doing inside. See, I'm here. I'm a person, but I still am living my life.
Yeah, and with software, so many people advocate, and I think rightly so, for the preference of being together in the same room, working together, the war room style, and it's interesting to see if the platforms have evolved that make it super easy to virtually simulate being in the same room. And yes, if you get up and go to the bathroom, well, if you were in that room, they would kind of see that you left the room and be comfortable, not think, oh, I have a camera on me.
Right.
Because if we're physically co-located, if I cough, yeah, they heard me cough. That's kind of what it is.
Exactly. Yeah. And you don't care. I think as technologists, we generally are less afraid than most people about having the cameras on us. There are those of us. I'm like, I love cybersecurity. I'm all for cybersecurity. I also love that there is so much data about me that like a digital twin of me exists right now somewhere. So I'm very excited for the world of Caprica to come, and like I want the Cylon version of me out there somewhere someday. I hope to see that before I die. And that can only exist if my digital footprint is recorded. So the more video of me, the better. The more apps that record me, the better. So it's a fine line. Like as technologists, we have to allow for these cameras to record us and these interactions to occur and to see us in our real environment. But that said, don't give up your privacy too easily. Know what you're doing. Right.
Well, this has been a fascinating interview for me, and for any of the listeners who are either trying to work remotely or managing a remote team and they want to kind of dig in and learn more about some of the things you said. Are there any go-to resources that they should immediately check out?
I think that there are a lot of publications coming out right now that where people are coming out of the woodwork and saying, "Hey, I've done this." My own column on Inc. magazine, I've published a lot of articles over the years about this. So just search for my name and remote, and you'll find some interesting things.
Well, Heather, thank you so much for coming on the Azure DevOps podcast and sharing with us. And I think, everybody today is whether they intentionally wanted to have a remote team, so many more people are working remotely right now and kind of learning the ins and outs. And so thanks for sharing with us and coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Jeffrey. It's been a pleasure.
A pleasure's all mine. And until next time, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.